Hi everyone. Thank you, Ronnie, for the organization and invitation. So I'm gonna talk today about the past erosions that we can reconstruct using the Lake Sediment archives. So we try to explore the human-induced perturbation in Holocene lateral carbon fluxes through Lake Sediment archives. So just a word for the introduction. So I come from the Cartel Limnological Center. So we are a laboratory located in the Alps in two different locations, Tonnerre-les-Bains and Bourget. And we are 40 people looking at the Lantic water system, basically the lakes. So we are very near the lakes. So you can see the two different locations. We have a harbor and so on, and the facilities to go to our field work quite often. We have an observatory of the lakes. We have some lakes located in the altitude, in the mountain, but also four main lakes, Bourget and Sillemont and Belette, with big watersheds, for which we have long-term monitoring data, sometimes up to 60 years of monitoring data to characterize the quality of the waters and also of the nutrient and particulate or dissolved material coming into the system. So over the last years, I've been quite dedicated to work with the stakeholders to observe the impact of the lateral export of nutrients, CNP, and on the erosion to the lakes. This is the little team I'm working with, and actually we are split into sub-teams working on the watershed and on the lakes. Our specificities is that we rely on this basic called lake watershed system, which is our basic unit, special unit of the study. And we are using the lake sediment archives to try to reconstruct the past environmental change, because the sediment archives record year after year as a continuous rate of change that documents the changes in the watershed and in the lake system. So we both investigate the erosion, CNP export, and the lake answers. Okay, so now we like to work on the lakes because we know that there are many on the Earth system. This is the location of the lakes around the world, and you can see this bias towards the northern hemisphere because of the last glacial erosion and the establishment of those depressions that create the lakes today. So because of the anthropogenic land use and climate changes, the export of carbon, the erosion has changed, and we are looking at those changes. Our idea with our team is to work on our pilot sites and to try some large-scale studies then after. So the land cover change alters the soil erosion, the lateral carbon transfer to the aquatic environment. They are an important component of the global carbon cycle, but the long-term dynamics, we assume that the long-term dynamics, the cause and impact, remain poorly understood and constrained. So if we look at the main driver of that we assume that drives the erosion and carbon export, we are not looking at the forecast, just the handcast. Actually, this is a land cover change. So many data exist that try to reconstruct the changes over decades to millennia, and we observe the changes toward more anthropogenic land use over time. And you can see the line represent the evolution of the human population which is quite correlated to the changes in the land cover change. You can see also that we may have some changes in the climate system, but over the Holocene, we first start with the assumption that we are quite in the same condition for the Holocene just before the start of the global warming. And this is not exactly true, but this is our assumption. Actually, it can work for part of the world, like in Europe. So now, I would like to share with you some results on a global scale investigation to infer the soil erosion from lake sedimentary archives. So this is the location of the study site. So actually we have compiled the database of the global pollen databases. They record the pollen fossil, and they are grouped into plant functional types, and we can work on those data to reconstruct the land cover changes. But they are also dated records, which means that this database contains some C14 dates, and we make use of these C14 ages to reconstruct or to try to reconstruct the evolution of the sediment accumulation rates. And the color of the different data points shows you the Mankendal trend, which gives you an idea of the global change, the evolution of the sediment accumulation rates in the lake system for all the sites. And if they increase, they are in red, and if they decrease, they are in green. So actually, we can observe on a first look at that, that we have a lot of heterogeneity, and we don't know if we can extract from those results some regional to global pattern. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's in this database. So actually, again, we are using the lake sediment cores that are taken from the lake sediments, and they are pile of sediment accumulation. If you want to have the record for the Holocene generally, you may have up to 20 meters of sediment thickness to reconstruct the Holocene, and some people, the community for the pollen have been working over the last 40 years collecting data from those archives and pulled up all those data in the database, and we use that to reconstruct the land cover and the erosion. So sediment accumulation, what it is not really a true erosion measurement. This is an accumulation. So we sometimes can see it as a sediment yield in some specific case, but in our case, we're going to use the sediment accumulation rate in the lake system as a proxy, so as a marker of the increase of the erosion. Actually, we cannot assess all the variability of the erosion signal, but we assume that we can at least identify and date the original increase, the historical increase of the lateral export to the lake. For the sake of the simplification, we removed the more recent period where we have the cultural eutrophication that may increase also the autochthonous productivity and the sediment accumulation rates. So we remove that from the CD and just try to identify the very long-term increase in sediment accumulation rate. So this is basically what looks like the C14 age. So actually, we have been working with about more than 4,000 C14 dates. We have calibrated all those dates. And on the right panel, you can see actually the ages based on the C14 measurements, and on the y-axis you can see the sediment depths along a sediment course. And you can see at some point we have a shift in the slope of the sediment accumulation with a very increase in the sediment accumulation rate derived from those C14 dates. And this is what is plotted on the left panel. So every time we can identify this change and date the acceleration of the sediment accumulation rate. So we have also been looking at some predictors to try to investigate not only the variability but also the controls on our proxy of erosion. So we have been using the pollen record as an indicator of the land cover change. And we differentiate the arboreal and non-arboreal pollen fraction to make it simple. So it is an indicator of the land openness. And then after, for the climate, we have been looking at the air temperature and precipitation derived from the circulation model ECAM6. We have been using also some other predictor as a state variable. And this is a little bit what looks like for all the sites. So we have been working with more than 600 of sites worldwide. All of those are only strictly Lex system. And you can see the air variation, the precipitation, the pollen record, which are derived from the pollen archives on the other form the model. This is a summary of the data input. And just lastly, we also introduced an early compaction model because we know that as soon as the sediment deposited in the lake, we have some early diagenesis that compact the lakes and may change the sediment accumulation rate. So we did account for that, and we have not accounted for the long-term diagenesis, making the assumption that it's quite linear and that will not affect the increase of from the recorded from the erosion. This is how we converted our sediment accumulation rate into mass accumulation rates, taking into account the density, but it doesn't change our profile. And now this is a little bit about our results. We normalized our erosion proxy, and you can see the time scale over there for almost the Holocene period. And the 0 represents the modern period on the left and the past on the right. Based on that, the upper panel represents the erosion proxy for the 600 sites. And this is a high density plot that shows the number of points detected per period of 50 years. And you can see that we slightly observe an increase in the positive anomalies towards a more recent period, which may indicate an increase in the sediment accumulation rate, and that we infer as an increase in the erosion. And you have the same pattern, but with a decrease with the pollen fraction corresponding to the arboreal pollen toward the more recent period, like this, and that should be related to land openness. So if we perform some trend analysis on this time series data, we can observe on the upper panel the trend for the global signal of our SAR sediment accumulation rate trends, and we can identify an inflection point around 4,000 years ago, and which we interpret as the first increase of the anthropogenic soil erosion at the time. And this is quite at the same time where we observe a decrease in the arboreal pollen fraction, so a decrease in the forest record. just right there in this line, and we have some sites for as a benchmark sites. This is the one of the upper curves that change not as much as the big one. And the difference is that the benchmark sites correspond to the lake system where we don't observe an increase in the sediment accumulation rate. So it means that we have a kind of a strong connection between the increase in our erosion proxy and the decrease in the forest extension. And we don't see, we don't know how to interpret the impact of the climate. So finally, our message is that we have an increase in our proxy of erosion long time ago, far before the industrial period. So the start of the erosion is it is a long story, and the main cause of that is the human land clearance at that time. We just tried, because we have a bias also of our study site towards the northern hemisphere. We try to look at the North America and Europe trends, and what we observe is that we have an increased, well observed for the European system, and that started a long time ago. So the global signal is driven by the European land clearance and the increase of erosion, while we don't see that signal, as much in North America. And the difference is that we have a different history between the two continents, and the delay between the extension of the intensive agriculture starting and so on, and connected to the time of the immigration. So we conducted some analysis just to validate that this is the land openings that driven the first increase in soil erosion. So we conducted some generalized additive model. So this is some statistic on the trend analysis, and we observed that the land cover change was the main explanation for that first increase. Yeah, but we know that we have some limitation because we use the precipitation and temperature from general circulation model. So yeah, we have some limitation, but still it works well. And finally, we have been using a subset of lake sediment records that is valved, for which we have the annual resolution in our lake system. So this is quite the best record we can find on a lake system. So every year you can have a data point. And for those, we compare the sediment accumulation rate and the arboreal pollen fraction, and we see this relation where that confirm the same pattern, that we have an opposite correlation, anti-correlation, and this increase of the sediment accumulation. So the take-home message for this part is that our multi-scale synthesis of lake sediment indicate that we have an increase in global soil erosion around 4,000 years ago. This increase is recorded in about 35% of our watershed. We have a lot of heterogeneity between sites. The land cover change is the main driver of this, of the variability of our erosion proxy, and the human land cover change has been the primary driver of accelerated erosion during the Holocene. We have many limitations with this database. As you observed, we have very few C14 dates per sediment course. We have a mean of 10 dated data point for characterizing the evolution of the erosion of the Holocene. So we don't capture the high frequency variability of the erosion. So this is why we need to complement those investigations with some more local and more detailed data. And this is what we do currently with our colleagues from EDITEM of the CNRS, and we are working on some alpine lakes, both from the altitude and the plane. And this is the picture of Lake de la Tuile, for instance. It is a nice lake. You can see the characteristic of that lakes, and Manon Bajard conducted over the last year some studies to characterize the erosion of that site using the lake sediment record on some soil profile. Now Theo, which is in a PhD, is working on trying to combine the paleo record with some model approach with Russell. And you can see the watershed is very small. And this is what look like in more detail the evolution of the pollen record, the arboreal and non-arboreal. The non-arboreal, so okay, the timing, so the 0 is there, so the modern period is on the right, and 4,000 years ago is on the left. And you can observe that we have a kind of more recent increase in the erosion. The erosion signal is that curve in the middle, expressed as a ton per square kilometer. It has been converted. Yeah. And you have the observation with the pollen indicates that you have an opening of the system along with some development with the agriculture practices and so on. So it seems like that we have a kind of a nice correlation. You can see also some rock eval analysis that tells you a little bit if the soil fraction exported to the lakes come from the lacustrine system or the topsoil or the deep soil. And we observe that during the strong increase in the erosion phases, we tend to increase the deep soil export. But if you took care of the scale over there, it is in log axis. And if you keep the normal axis, you can see that the same curve looks completely different. And we have a major increase of the soil erosion and export during what we call the erosion crisis. So around 1,000 years ago. And so we are trying to look at that carefully for some ongoing project, because our goal is to well constrain some model of erosion. And maybe we need to look at some new relationship based on the time scale we are considering our study. For instance, if you consider the first curve, we have a linear relationship, but if you consider the second one, we have a kind of a more likely an exponential or log relationship. And this is something to consider if we want to reconstruct. And we cannot apply, for instance, Russell in a linear way. So our hypothesis to improve the simulation of erosion is that maybe we can explain some large increase on the decoupling between the land opening and the response of the erosion because of the gully erosion that we don't formulate generally properly. And we need to draw some conclusion for some upscaling. Just to see what we can do, we observe on the field some gully erosion. So we have some very nice picture. We can use the LIDAR data to quantify the mass of, so you have the lake there and you have the gully well observed on the watershed, and we can quantify how much of the sediments has been removed. So actually we have different way to calculate. This is the way we calculated the volume exported, and this volume corresponds to about 60% of if we reposition that to the Holocene. We don't know exactly when it occurs, but if this is an Holocene gully, it corresponds to up to 60% of the volume of sediment in a lake. So it could be up to 60% of the erosions, which is massive for this site, and need to be accounted for. So we have been using the erosion model, the Russell, for that site to represent the not the gully, but the surface erosion. And this is our results when we compare the evolution of the simulated erosion for the surface and our proxy of soil erosion in a black. This is our proxy and the simulation constrained by the land cover change reconstructed from the pollen. And you can see this massive increase at the end. And you can see that we can't capture the highest increase in the sediment erosion because Russell doesn't simulate the gully erosion. Yeah, but we tend just a generalization of our results based on 6 different lakes. And we observe the same pattern for the 6 different sites. So you have 2 curves every time. So this is 6 sites where you have the proxy curve from the sediment archives in the red color, and in the blue, this is the simulation that we perform from, I think this is the Russell constrained by the HIDE land cover change database. And we observe almost all the time an underestimation of the erosion based on the HIDE constrained soil erosion reconstruction, which lead us to that conclusion that for our sites in the Alps, half of the soil erosion in the Alps during the Holocene was explained by the erosion crisis, which is not very much well captured, neither by the land cover change reconstruction from the HIDE or the model. So we need to improve that, because maybe this can make a lot for the cumulative Holocene erosion export. And for that, the take-home message is to try to use some empirical reconstruction of the land cover to try to best approximate the timing and amplitude of the erosion, and to implement a little bit the model by including those gully erosion. So the final message for that part, and this is my last slide, is that half of soil erosion in the Alps during the Holocene may be explained by the erosion crisis, at least for our 6 sites. We have a non-linear relationship between the land cover change and the erosion during the Holocene. The gully erosion may amplify the erosion during the land clearing phases, and there is a need for a better land cover change constraint and for a better representation of the erosion crisis to estimate Holocene crisis, erosion, and lateral export. Oh, okay, sorry. I've got just for the perspective. Now with this experience, we starting a project that involves Ronnie, Pierre Régnier, but also Philippe Sillet. And we are going to work on a deep sea project that will try to estimate the carbon sink or methane source of the lake system. So actually, we will look both on the modeling of the landscape and the erosion and export of carbon, and the downstream effect on the carbon emission and carbon storage into the lake. So this is the current evolution for our project, and yeah, with our main objective to understand and model the role of the Atlantic waters in the carbon cycle and climate, and yeah, to investigate the variation and the impact on the carbon storage, GIS emission, and the control factor. And with this, I thank you for your attention.